And hello there folks, Uncle Troy here with a C-word update. For those of you who aren't familiar, this is a video about my treatment with cancer. So if you came here looking for one of the happy-go-lucky fun and games videos, you need to look elsewhere. I'm not feeling really great today, but I am feeling better than I have felt in the last couple days, so it's time to do a video. Because you never know when the next bad day is coming, so you want to hit the good days every chance you get. So a couple of weeks back, I was having Monday of a couple of weeks back, we'll say, just to be specific. I went in for my chemotherapy, and which involved getting a couple different chemicals pumped into me there at the doctor's office, and then getting a take-home pump, which I think I've shown you before, and if not, I'll try to remember to put a picture up somewhere. And the take-home pump about Wednesday, about 11 in the morning, I was supposed to take that back because that was when it's supposed to be finished. Then they disconnect me, send me home, and I'd be done for a couple of weeks. And the take-home pump about 5 that morning started beeping, telling me it was empty. So I shut it off, and instead of waiting to go into the doctor at 11, I went in at 9 in the morning as soon as they were open. And they said, "Oh no, Mr. Cheek, this is not empty. It must have misread the reservoir or something. You still got about 6 hours worth of chemicals to go into you here." So I told my ride, "Hey buddy, if you got something else to do, go ahead, because I'm going to be here for another 6 hours." And they said, "No, no, 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 don't send you right away. We can fix that." Beep, 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 beep. And they pumped out 6 hours worth of chemicals in a half hour, which at the time I thought was a great thing because that, got me out of there sooner. But then it occurred to me later that's a bad thing because this was something that's supposed to be put into me over a course of like 46 hours. So I wasn't too surprised when I didn't feel great the next day. Of course, after receiving the chemo, I normally don't feel good for a couple days after. And I can't drink ice water for several days after because I have a sensitivity to cold. And the cold feels like an electric shock. So if you can imagine getting a taser to the throat, that's what taking a big gulp of ice water just after chemo, this particular chemo, your mileage may vary, feels like. So I felt bad for a few days, and the next Monday, exactly 1 week after this chemo started, I started feeling better. In fact, I felt so good that if I felt that good Tuesday, I was going to call up work and see, can I come back and work a few days, because I finally feel up to come back. Because since I had the port put in, if I showed you that lately, it's healing up nicely. But this hump here is a port where they can hook up the chemo and pump it into me. Since I've had the pump installed, I've not been able to work because they wouldn't let me work for several weeks after the surgery until that was healed up and settled in. And then the chemo has just made me feel so bad I've not been able to work. I would not want to go someplace where somebody's life was in my hands. So I felt good enough Monday that if I feel this good Tuesday, I'm going to call them up and tell them I'm ready to work. Put me on the schedule. So Monday night, I guess it was, I woke up throwing up. And luckily I had this by my side, which is a guaranteed authentic Polk County puke bucket, which basically you take a milk jug, you cut the top off, you put some paper towels down the bottom, and you ralph into this. Bleh. And I've had one of these by the side of my bed for a long time now, because ever since the last time I was sick to my stomach because of the chemo. And I ralphed pretty long and hard there, and tried to take a couple of I've got various pills they've given me for nausea and vomiting, so I tried to take a couple of them, go back to sleep. That didn't work. But eventually, during all the coughing and trying to drink water, trying to drink, because once you start throwing up, you stop eating. You stop trying to drink fruit juice or whatever. You try to get as much water into you as possible. This is what I've always been told. If you're throwing up, don't try to drink milk, don't try to drink juice, don't try to drink Slim Fast or any shakes or anything. Go to straight water. I've always been told that when you're throwing up, go for water. So every time I try to drink water, it would feel like it would get about here and stop. And I kind of had a gag thing. Anytime I'd burp or something would come up more forcefully, it felt like it'd get there and stop and then come on. So I felt very bad, and eventually I went back to sleep, woke up feeling bad, more rounds with the bucket, sleep, bucket, sleep, bucket. And then, which reminds me of a story. Back when my younger days, we didn't always have the bucket. What we had was an old white trash can that would be in the bedroom. And when the kids got sick, the first thing we would do is run over and puke into the trash can, because that was just what we did. And then my father would curse because, we just filled the trash can full of puke. And he would take it out and sit it at the back door, where the water would run off from the rain, off the roof, and it would be funneled together and it would come in and would wash out the trash can. So we had that old white plastic trash can that I remember from years and years and years, throwing up into it many, many times. And then my father would curse, and he'd take it out back, and then the next rain it would wash out, and we'd bring it in. But of course, once you puked in the bucket, once you puked, then you had to cut yourself a milk jug, put some paper towels in the bottom, keep it with you all the time, because he wasn't going to clean out any more trash cans. Anyway, so that was Monday night, and about Tuesday afternoon, my brother, who had been helping me out with this and trying to bring me water and trying to get me to drink plenty of fluids and all that, he looked at his smartphone. I think he was keeping track. Looked at his smartphone and said, you're throwing up every 3 to 6 hours. Those nausea pills aren't helping. Maybe you ought to see the doctor about this. And I said, yeah, hand me the phone. Well, about the time we handed me the phone, I realized it was after 5 o'clock, and the doctors had already closed. So the only option would be go to the emergency room down at the local hospital, and you don't want to do that. So I said, well, if I'm not feeling any better in the morning, I'll give him a call. So went through that night, and about every 3 to 6 hours, I think, was how it worked out. And so that morning, about 8 o'clock, I gave them a call and left a message because they hadn't opened yet. And then about 9 o'clock, I called back to make sure they got my message. And the staff had got the message, and they passed it on to the nurse, and she'd get back to me. So about 10 o'clock, the lump was right here, and just swallowing the spit in your mouth was painful. And it was almost like a chest pain. And I was afraid I was having a heart attack, or acid reflux had scarred my esophagus, or I had an aneurysm or something. Something had broke loose and was putting pressure somewhere. And so I said, that's it. Start getting the stuff together. We are going to the hospital. And so my brother started gathering together all my drugs, and I had not realized until he started gathering them up that I've actually placed my drugs in several different places around here. Apparently I've got the drugs I take in the morning, and I've got the drugs I take at night, and I've got the drugs I take every day, and I've got the drugs I don't take unless, as needed. And apparently I'd placed them in different spots depending on when I was taking them, how I was taking them. So we gathered up a quart freezer bag, I think it was, and found out that I had just enough drugs, along with my glucometer, my blood glucose sugar meter here, and I think a couple of pieces of paper, was just enough to fill a quart freezer bag. So that tells you how many different bottles of drugs I've got laying around. And that was leaving out the big bottle of special mouthwash and some other stuff that I don't take, as often. I don't think the doctor needed to know, since I hadn't taken them in a while. So about the time we were getting ready to head toward the car, the doctor's office finally called back and said, don't go to the ER, come see us. So that's what we did. And so I walked in with the jug and said I was there, and they said, okay, hold on a minute, and they said, go back to the chemo area, somebody will be back there. So I went back there, and one of the PAs or NPs or something, not the doctor, but the other people that are like doctors, and you have to call them doctor, but they have to be checked by a doctor or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, he came out and poked at me and listened to my description of what was going on, and basically said, so it's not even nausea, your stomach's not upset. And I said, no, it's not. He says, it's like a super gag reflex. And I said, that's it exactly. You've nailed it. And he says, well, what happens when you said you can't drink water? And I said, yeah. And he said, what happens when you try to drink a thicker liquid or eat something? And I said, well, I haven't tried that since I started. No, I've only been trying to drink water. And he says, oh, well, so he turns to somebody else, says, reach over there and get me one of them and it was one of those little bottles of whatever for people that can't drink or eat a lot, so they can get more nutrition. I forget what it's called, and I'm not gonna endorse any particular brand, but it was a little thick chocolate shake, actually strawberry, because he asked me if I want chocolate or strawberry or vanilla, and I said strawberry sounds nice. And so give it, just a little bitty bottle, give me a little bitty straw, and I was able to drink down 8 ounces of thing, which was probably the most I had drank in like 2 days. And is that okay? It's going down? Yeah, it still feels like it's stopping right here. He says, we got a little bit of inflammation here. We're going to send you off to the hospital to have a CT scan to see what the problem is. But first, we're going to give you a liter of fluids. And so they hung a big bag of fluids, plugged it into my port, and I got to sit there for a couple hours while that ran through and gave me a lot, put more moisture into my system. Basically, it was a big bag of water with a little bit of salt in it. So that was Wednesday, and I started feeling better. Just getting something in my stomach and getting the fluids in, I felt better. So we picked up a 6-pack of those little chocolate shakes or strawberry shakes, whatever flavor we ended up that first day, and went home. And later that evening, I started feeling chilled. So I took my temperature and found I had a little bit of temperature. So I grabbed some ibuprofen, popped one to bring down the fever. And it just so happened when I woke up a couple hours later, the lump was gone, and I could swallow normally. So apparently the ibuprofen, which is some kind of non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug, whatever it did, its mechanism, I think, and this is just me, this is not the doctors. In fact, the doctors told me don't be taking ibuprofen for this all the time because ibuprofen all the time is bad for your stomach. I think it did something to affect this. So I had a pretty good night, Wednesday night of sleeping. So Thursday I had to go in for a CT very early in the morning. I think like 6:30 in the morning, so they could get me on the table at 7 o'clock. And I figured, well, if we're taking a CT scan, which is a picture of the inside of my body, very fancy x-ray basically, and the ibuprofen makes it feel better, reduces the inflammation or whatever, then I don't need to take the ibuprofen before I have this test, because that would be a very bad thing. We want them to be able to see what is going wrong. So I did not take my ibuprofen that morning. And as I'm waiting in and I'd left my jug out in the truck because I hadn't felt bad on the drive over, but as I'm waiting in the waiting room, don't know why it took me a minute to remember waiting in the waiting room, the lump started coming back, and I started feeling that pressure and that gagging. So I asked my brother, could they go get me something, and they grabbed me one of these. And these are cute little things. They've got this nice little open springy thing, so it keeps it open for you. And if you can see, it's got little lines on there, so you can measure exactly how much you've spit up into these things. So I was out there with one of these, and before they could take me from the waiting room to the actual CT, I did Ralph a bit, Technicolor yawn or whatever. And my brother later told me that the staff that kind of disappeared after they gave me this and said, well, somebody will be here to pick you up in a minute. One of them was hiding over in the corner of her little booth with her eyes shut and her hands over her ears while I was doing my performance. And it always strikes me funny how people who work at a hospital and around sick people all the time can't handle sick people, or can't handle certain people at the hospital, can't handle certain types of sick people. And so it always strikes me as funny. Of course, I didn't think it was funny then. Right then, I was too busy, looking at the bottom of this bag and figuring, oh, I'm up to the second line now. Anyway, so I got the CT, and fortunately, because I had the power port, they were able to hook up to that to inject the contrast dye that goes to the CT that helps better show what's inside the body. I did not know I needed to bring the little card that I got when I had the port installed, but luckily since I had the port installed at the same hospital I was having a CT at, they were able to pull my records and say that yes, this is the type of port that you can put CT dye through. Apparently there are some types of ports you can't. Okay, didn't know that. So Then I had the CT, and once I had the CT, and of course they don't tell you anything about the CT, but they said they'd tell my doctor, and the doctor would tell me. So I went back home, took an ibuprofen, got rid of the lump, took a nap, ate a little maybe, I forget exactly, but I get a call later that afternoon saying, can I go back to the hospital for a barium swallow on Friday? And barium swallow didn't sound didn't sound like something I wanted to do. So I asked them if it was necessary, and they said yes. So I went in for a barium swallow and had to be there like at 9:30 or something like that. And I went in, and once again, I did not take my ibuprofen that morning, figuring, if something's going to go wrong, I want it to go wrong during the test. So they had left me a couple of these, or actually they'd sent me home with one of these after I'd filled up the other two. And so I took this with me, and they said, oh, you feeling bad? And it's actually, this is left over from yesterday. I just figured keep it safe, keep it nearby. I says, well, we'll try not to be too bad on you. And the barium swallow has you stand up in front of a sensitive screen, and they have an X-ray emitter in front of you that produces a continuous source of X-ray, something like 2 to 3 frames a second. And the doctor looks at it while you're drinking. And remember me saying when they gave me that little protein shake or whatever, that it was a little bitty bottle, little bitty thin straw. I could take little bitty sips, went down just fine. When they gave me the barium, it was in a big, like 1 liter container. Had one of them big sports straws like you see at a stadium that's like, big around your little finger. And the slightest little sip on that gets you a whole mouthful of stuff that you have to swallow or spit out. And barium sulfate, by the way, tastes like warm milk and chalk, just in case you ever wondered. So they had me, lean up against the thing, swallow that down, lean over this way, turn over this way, turn backwards. We're going to lay you down now. And the doctor told me something which was actually pretty good news, in that he didn't see any nodules or tears or anything that indicated a physical problem. It's just that would get here and it would stop. My esophagus would spasm, esophageal spasm. And then it would go on down. And he actually had me swallow a pill, just a big chunk of something or another. He said there was no actual drugs in it, just swallow this pill. And it would get to about here, kind of hang around for a while, then go on down. So I'm now ordered by that doctor to drink a full glass of water every time I take any type of pill or eat any type of food. Whereas at the time, eating and drinking wasn't a big on my list of things to do, because I was feeling badly. But as things would have it, when I got home from that, I felt better. Part of it was feeling better from knowing that this wasn't like a nodule or a cancer cell or something that was messing up. It was more just the esophagus, the nerves not working right. And this is just me in my own head. This is not a doctor telling me this, but I know that some of the chemotherapy drugs I'm on cause my nerves to act funny. I get dizzy sometimes, my blood pressure runs low, cold, feels like an electric shock. So I think it's entirely possible this whole esophageal spasm thing was at least partly because of the chemotherapy I'd had recently. So over the next couple of days it went better, and like I said, Friday I think is when we had the barium swallow. This is Sunday. I'm eating and drinking fairly normally. I'm still kind of weak. Of course, I hardly ate or drank anything all week. Yesterday I ate too much, and part of my distress today, why I'm not just all happy and cheerful and just peppy and full of energy, is that my stomach, which was empty, and my bowels, which was empty, now have new food going through them for the first time. And they're like, hey, we were taking a break. We don't want this. So I'm getting a little abdominal discomfort. It's nothing major. It's nothing I haven't felt before long after, unrelated to the cancer, I guess you should say. But it's I'm just not uppity today. I'm not feeling real perky. But I am feeling better than I have been, and that's what you have to do. You have to take the good days when you get them. During the worst of this, I actually talked to my brother about some of the things. There are a lot of people in my life that, they don't want to see you in pain. They don't want to, they know you don't want to suffer, and I look at it slightly different. It's not that I'm suffering now. It's not like I'm having a bad day. It's, will tomorrow be better? And I will take any amount of suffering, any amount of pain, as long as there's a chance that tomorrow will be a better day. And I had to make sure to express that to my brother, because there was a time when I was ralphing and clutching my stomach and curled up in a little fetal position, where I'm sure if I had said, take a gun and shoot me, he would have shot me just to put me out of my misery. But we're nowhere near that, because, a few days later and I'm feeling much better. Not feeling 100%. I hope in a couple more days I will, because tomorrow we start the next round of chemotherapy, and that's usually how it runs. About the first day I feel 100%, that's when we start the next round of chemotherapy. I believe this is the 4th and last run of chemotherapy in this first course of treatment. I think I'm going to discuss that with them tomorrow when I'm there. And so starting tomorrow, I won't be able to drink ice water again. So that's why I'm just drinking tons and tons of ice water today. So good day today. I've been getting all your emails, all your thumbs up, likes, etc. on the videos, on the Facebook, all the interaction. Sometimes if I'm not feeling good, I will not respond to your stuff, but I am reading them every day. It's just as soon as they come in, I try to read them. And I want you to know how much I appreciate that, because I think one of my grandfathers, back when he was sick, said something along the lines of, I'm surrounded by people I love, and that's a good day. So keep the thoughts and prayers coming. It's Uncle Troy signing out. Please have a good night.